Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. College hoops perspective, it's going to start to slow down, right? We know what January, February, March is like for college hoops. We know April is now portal season where rosters are getting built. And there are certainly some big names still in the portal that we're going to react to as they commit. But for the most part, roster building is done. And so now we're going to still talk about this sport as miscellaneous things pop up. And there was certainly something that was noteworthy that came out on Thursday afternoon, something that I think everybody had been hoping for, but we didn't know if it was going to happen. I am talking about a game between Kentucky and St. John's. Okay, so this is something that has been talked about since essentially the day that Mark Pope took the Kentucky job. He, of course, was the captain of the 1996 national championship team, played under Rick Pitino. And basically, listen, clearly water is under the bridge with Pitino. He was back at Big Blue Madness. The fan base at Kentucky loves him. Certainly the fan base at St. John's loves him. And it always seemed like, okay, we got to get something on the calendar between these two programs. There was talk of a home and home. It never really came together. But I bring it up because over the last few days, it felt like there could be something at the CBS Sports Classic. Okay, CBS Sports Classic, for people who forget, is the event. It's a one-day event, so it's not a tournament. It's a one-day event. And for years, there's been 4 teams. It's been Kentucky, North Carolina, UCLA, and Ohio State. Well, over the weekend, there were rumblings that one team was asking out and that either St. John's or UConn could become the team that fills the absence of the team asking out. Now, as a UConn guy, I can tell you I actually felt pretty good. It was not going to be UConn. I'll explain why in a minute. But over the last couple days, we said, could we potentially see Rick Pitino and St. John's against Mark Pope and Kentucky in this event that takes place every single year right around Christmas? The event itself kind of needed a boost. Well, we got the official word on Thursday. Producer Matt, play the two coaches yapping via FaceTime.
30 years since you won your first national championship, and I got mine, thanks to you. And I think we should give the Johnnies and all of BBN the greatest Christmas gift ever on December 20th in Catlanta. What do you say?
You know, it feels like it was about 7-8 years ago that we won the championship, but I coached one of the greatest teams in the history of the game, and you were the captain. And now we get to coach against each other. I'm just turning 60 years of age, and you're still young.
I can't wait, Coach. I love you so much, man. Let's go make this happen.
Love you, Mark. Let's go. It'd be so exciting for both programs. And
so there you have it, December 20th, 2025, the last Saturday before Christmas. I think there's going to be some college football playoff games going on that day, but make sure to clear a few hours because we are getting Pitino versus Kentucky in Atlanta. Let me say this, man, great for college basketball, another marquee game in what should be a really fun early part of the college hoop slate in 2025, 2026 that we will be talking about a lot here over the next couple months, okay? So first of all, like I said, you started to hear rumblings that this was going to happen. Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, he put out a tweet on Sunday, I think it was, basically implying that there were rumblings that one of the 4 teams in the event wanted out. Again, the event had been Kentucky, Ohio State, UCLA, and North Carolina. I retweeted, quote tweeted, whatever, that basically my assumption was that it was UCLA. Mick Cronin has been very vocal about the travel that has been involved with the Big Ten. And immediately when I saw this event was in Atlanta, I could see Mick Cronin, stomping his feet into the CBS offices and saying, we're not flying back across country. Remember, now that they're in the Big Ten, I mean, we're talking about probably 5 to 6 cross-country road trips every season now. You play 10 road games in the Big Ten. Obviously, you're going to play a couple on the West Coast with Washington, Oregon, USC, but that's still 3 or 4 trips, plus the Big Ten tournament, plus, of course, if you get the NCAA tournament like they did this year in Lexington. So I kind of felt like it was going to be UCLA, and I didn't really think it was going to be UConn because Dan Hurley's been very vocal about the types of games that he was looking for. And this didn't really feel like this was going to be the opportunity for UConn. Doesn't really matter. The bottom line is with UCLA out, they needed a spot. Rick Pitino and St. John's are in. And I'll just say this, as a college basketball fan, you just have to be excited. Okay, we're going to break down the Kentucky depth chart a little bit more, only because Mark Pope did speak with John Rothstein earlier this week. But when I look at these two teams, in my opinion, are two of the top 10 teams in college basketball coming into 2025, 2026. And of course, that's assuming there's nothing crazy with, one, God forbid, injuries, but certainly, obviously, Kentucky has Otega Owe testing the NBA draft waters. I would obviously have to reevaluate them if he did not end up staying in college basketball. But on paper, these are two of the top 10 teams in the country, okay? St. John's has done as good of a job as anybody in college basketball in the portal, revamping that roster. Zuby Ejiofor is the returnee of note, all Big East second team. But what Rick Pitino has done is insane. Bryce Hopkins, ironically, remember, former Kentucky Wildcat Bryce Hopkins. So first of all, you have the Bryce Hopkins revenge game. Bryce Hopkins played against Kentucky in the NCAA tournament a few years ago for Providence. And then you have Josan Sanan, former five-star who played at Arizona State. He is joining St. John's. Ozias Sellers, who I think is going to be a really good player for them. Dylan Mitchell, the transfer from Cincinnati, a one-time McDonald's All-American. And I just bring it up because when I look at St. John's, and I said this, I did update my way too early top 25 earlier in the week. We'll talk about it probably on Sunday night show. But I only bring it up because when I updated my top 25, I said that I believe that St. John's, a 31-win team, which won the Big East regular season and the Big East tournament, best season obviously in 40 years. I said at that time, I believe that the roster that Rick Pitino has put together is just as athletic, will be just as good defensively, and will be much better offensively with Bryce Hopkins, with Ozias Sellers, with Josan Sanan, and of course with Ian Jackson, who I somehow forgot, maybe the biggest recruit of the Rick Pitino era. Now, listen, there are questions about the point guard. Is it going to be Ian Jackson? Dylan Darling comes in as a transfer. But I just bring it up because St. John's on paper is one of the 2, 3, 4 best teams in the country, and 4 or 5 might be a little bit too negative. I think I have them at number 3 in my way too early top 25. By the way, as producer Matt has pointed out, we do have a Torres on SJU account for all of you St. John's fans. Torres on SJU. Kentucky, listen, we've talked about the roster and we'll talk about it again in a minute. But what's interesting about Kentucky is that, I think they're easily a top 10 team as well. Mark Pope, we've talked about the fact that it was very clear in the offseason he had to prioritize size, athleticism, and toughness. I think by the end of last year, when all the injuries started to creep up, you saw a team that athletically probably couldn't really match up with the best teams in college basketball. We saw it in the loss in the NCAA tournament to Tennessee, on and on. Well, he's added some of the best transfers in the country. Again, we're going to break it down in a minute, but Jaden Quaintance, I think he could be like SEC Player of the Year if everything goes well next year. I think, by the way, Otega Owe could be SEC Player of the Year next year if things go well also. We have Denzel Aberdeen, who, if you listen to the interview with John Rothstein, Mark Pope loves. You add Mo Diabate, I think one of the most underrated players in the portal this offseason. And so I just bring it up because this Kentucky team, to me on paper, and I didn't name everybody, but I'm just telling you who is on the roster, it's going to be as good as anybody in college basketball. And so that is the top 10 matchup that we are going to get in December. I'll say this too, a couple thoughts here as we kind of switch gears in a minute. But one, first of all, I think this is actually great for this event in general. I think College Hoops has done a very good job of putting on compelling games and compelling matchups that people want to watch basically from the start of the season with the Champions Classic. Maui is usually pretty good, although we'll see what happens. It's a weaker field this year, Battle for Atlantis, etc. This was kind of the event that it kind of felt like just didn't have a lot of juice. If it basically it's Kentucky and Carolina, Ohio State has its years, and then UCLA is a good program, but UCLA doesn't bring fans, and sometimes it's a neutral court. And, I've been to this event 4 or 5 times. I was at it once in Brooklyn, twice in Vegas. And, this is the kind of event that if Kentucky isn't bringing, 5,000, 7,000 fans with them, sometimes the event just kind of lacks a little bit of luster. I actually was talking to some people like, this is an event. Should we cancel it? Should we move it on campuses so you'd get, a couple games at Rupp Arena, a couple, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is I think it needed some new juice. I don't think, UCLA bouncing is the worst thing. And now all of a sudden this becomes a must-watch event for college hoops fans. And I think it's an important event because, again, it's going to be a top 10 matchup, Rick Pitino versus Kentucky. Obviously, the first time since he left, since he got to St. John's, A couple other notes I'll add really quickly. One, Kentucky's schedule is insane. Okay. So Kentucky, can't criticize them for not challenging themselves in the out of conference. Michigan State in the Champions Classic. That will be the first week of the season. Also, never forget, Indiana is now back on the schedule. That one is at Rupp this year. That's a 6-game series. I forget, how it all works. There's a couple games in Indy, one game in Bloomington, whatever. But Indiana's back on the schedule with a longtime rival. You have Louisville, which is going to be a top 10 team at the Yum Center later on in the year. And oh, by the way, on top of all of that, we are awaiting word. Gonzaga, by the way, in Nashville. And you have, of course, the SEC ACC Challenge, the new event of the last couple years, where you could get a marquee opponent from the ACC as well. So Kentucky's schedule is loaded. From the St. John's perspective, we don't know a ton right now. But to me, this is the Rick Pitino element of it all. Rick Pitino showing up. Rick Pitino, they were playing games in front of 800 people at Carnesecca Arena 2 years ago, of probably a 4,000 or 5,000 seat facility. Now you're in the Champions or the CBS Sports Classic playing Kentucky, and it is going to be one of the most anticipated games of the year. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely awesome. The other early scheduling notes, it appears as though Ole Miss will play St. John's at Madison Square Garden. We're awaiting word on that. And I think there's going to be a couple other big ones still on the St. John's schedule. That's on top of 20 league games in the Big East. But I'll tell you what, man, listen. One, I love that these schools waited. I'm glad that they waited. I'm glad that they waited till May. I'm glad that this didn't come out like March 11th when we had a million things to talk about. But two, I think this is great for college basketball. As we say, with the college football playoff going deeper into December and January, it's always good to have games that kind of make you want to watch. This is certainly going to be one, and I'm excited about that.